Yes, hello and welcome everybody to the third video here now in the Ministry of Dice's Having a Brew series. Chris again here, otherwise known as the True Mr. Six, flying solo once again to, well, this series is all about talking about team brewing, card, combos, all that merry good stuff that we like with the game, casual or competitive. And this particular one in the series is on the subject of Nihiloor. Nihiloor. You know that guy, the new guy in Trouble in Waterdeep called Nihiloor. Nihiloor. But more importantly, not just him and his global, his exciting global, but to talk a little bit about the power of KOing your own characters. Let me show you Nihiloor. I think that's the one I'm going to go for. Nihiloor. Nihiloor. Let me know in the comments below, somebody. Here he is. He's got some game text and some stats and whatever, blah, 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 blah. But the reason I'm focusing on him for the purposes of this video is that global down there. It says, pay a mask. Once per turn, you may KO a character die you control. Now, KOing your own characters is not really a new thing in Dice Masters. Certainly long-standing players who are watching this video going, yeah, what's all the fuss? You know, we've been KOing our own characters since AVX, and they'd be right. It absolutely isn't a new thing. Certainly Blue Eyes White Dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! Was very popular, and here's just some examples of some combos that we used with Blue Eyes White Dragon back in the day to make use of that idea of KOing your own characters to get a KO effect. Or to recycle a when fielded that you wanted to reuse. Scarecrow, that's one for the double burst guys. If you're still out there watching this stuff, where you could KO Scarecrow to capture an opponent's character. Black Manta is an example of the retaliation keyword, a particularly potent example of the retaliation keyword from the Justice League set. Actually, while I'm mentioning Justice League, one thing that also occurs to me is one of the old school methods of removal used to be Blue Eyes Global comboed up with Solomon Grundy. There was a Solomon Grundy that when you KO'd him could KO an opponent's character. Many more besides. So KOing isn't particularly a new thing in the world of Dice Masters, and certainly since Blue Eyes has rotated out and in the current modern meta. We've had, there's fabricators. Here's an example of one, Supreme Intelligence. Fabricates a game text where you can KO a specified number of dice, in this instance 2, to a total purchase value that's specified, in this instance 5, to buy the character, but more importantly, you're getting that double KO going on there. Or we've seen Malekith from the Mighty Thor set, just like Blue Eyes really, but he buys just actions rather than the next dice you purchase. But I suppose the thing is, up until this point, until Nihiloor has come along in Trouble in Waterdeep, in the modern meta, we've only been able to KO our own characters in our own turn. As you can see there, Malekith Global says once during your turn, and Fabricate you can do in your own main step, or at least I believe that's correct. I'm sure someone will come flying in on the comments and let me know otherwise. So the reason Nihiloor, definitely going for that one, Nihiloor. That one seems to roll off my tongue better. The reason Nihiloor has kind of caught my eye, not only is it another method, another means of KOing your own characters that is convenient, it's a different energy type to use to KO your own characters, but it also brings you the once per turn element. So the power of KOing your characters was already definitely a thing. It was being played around with in the modern meta, but I don't think quite as much as it had been in days gone by. So it's kind of like a retro revisiting of a kind of classic way of playing, because now you can KO your own characters in your opponent's turn as well as your own. Let me show you some example modern cards that have a when KO'd effect that you can play around with. And I mean, there's many of them. I haven't got the time or the depth of knowledge or didn't do enough research. I suppose I'm operating very much off the top of my head here, but they can give you an example of how you can use when KO'd both in your own turn and in your opponent's turn for interesting effects. In the first instance, I'm thinking like ramp. There's lots of KO'd effects that you can use for ramp. The least of which is just KOing a dice to use for ramp the next turn. To KO a character in the hope that you can roll it in on double energy. But here's Grell. I think I'm not a D&D lore guy, but I think he's kind of connected to or related to Grell. To Nihiloor. Nihiloor's got another brain thing with him there, and this is like a brain bird I mean, there in the picture, he's stroking what looks like a brain dog. But Grell's a brain bird because he's got a beak. So there's like a thing going on there with brain things. I don't know. But anyways, game tech says when Grell is KO'd, you may draw 2 dice from your bag, prep one, and place the other in your use pile. So what a tremendous both ramp and churn kind of mechanic all in one there. Grell's nice and cheap and cheerful at the 2 bolt cost. Get him out in the field, then smash him off with Nihiloor's Global. Draw 2 dice out your bag. Pop the one in prep that you want. Put the one you don't want in the use pile, but also you've kind of thinned out your bag, cleared your bag through, so there's more juicy stuff waiting for you as well, because presumably anyone in their right mind would put the least attractive dice in the use pile. And then he's waiting in prep area to be used again next turn. Either he's a bit of extra energy, an energy boost, a bit of a ramp boost, in addition to the one that you've prepped to increase your purchasing power, or you refield him and do it all over again. And for the cost of 1 mask, I think that's pretty powerful. And masks aren't hard to come by. There's lots of cheap mask characters to really up your mask count for doing things like this type of global. Let me give you another example. Along the same sort of lines, we've got Beast here, Acrobatic Aggression. He's from the X-Men First Class set. 2 cost Fist. When Beast is KO'd, you may add up to 2 dice from your use pile to your bag. So lovely way of just really, again, just getting to the juicy stuff. Those dice that you want to be playing with super, super fast, ASAP. So you've got Beast out in the field. You've just bought a dice that you really, really want to get round super quick, get him churned through and into the field. So use Nihiloor's Global to KO Beast, and then just move that just purchased dice into into your bag, to increase the chances of drawing it for the next turn. Mantis, another classic example, the Grand Mistress of Martial Arts. A little bit more expensive on the 3 side, but just very clean, very simple. When Mantis is KO, draw a dice from your bag and add it to your prep area. Now, she's an interesting example of one that you might want to hold back and not do until your opponent's turn. She's got that 3/4/4 defense number, so she's a nice little dice to keep kind of chilling in the field. Hold her back until your opponent's attack step. You might be sensing there's an attack coming your way. Maybe you want to keep your defense numbers up because your opponent has got a Venerable Dreadnought. You can see some range coming down the pipeline and you think, oh, I'm going to need a blocker this next turn. Great, fine. Keep Mantis in the field. Hold her back until your opponent's turn. And then once you've used her as a blocker, if she's going to survive, which you may well do with a 3/4/4 defense, use your Nihiloor Global in your opponent's action or global step of the attack phase, KO her then, get her prepped up along with an additional dice for the next turn, and then again, same with the other guys, use her to increase your purchasing power and roll her in on the masks, or refield her and use the cycle all over again at a 0.01 fielding cost. That's not too painful at all. Here's a more kind of situational specific example. Steve Trevor, Themysciran Liaison. He's a personal favourite of mine because I love playing with Wonder Woman. Hey, I meant the card. When Steve Trevor is KO'd, you may immediately purchase a Wonder Woman die for up to 3 less and prep it. So pop Steve out in the field, use the Nihiloor Global to KO him, and then he's in prep, and the cheap Wonder Woman that you've just purchased is waiting in prep, and it's a win-win really, because if Steve rolls energy, well, that's increasing your purchasing power for next turn, and because he's already served his purpose to get you the Wonder Woman. If he rolls in as a character, he's cheap to field, he's got some interesting attack stats, and he might serve as a nice blocker or an aggressive attacker for the following turn. Or, buy yourself another Wonder Woman. We can't have too many Wonder Women, that's for sure. So KOing your own characters, yeah, absolutely can drive the ramp and churn on your team. It's interesting because you can use not only what you've prepped or moved from used to increase your purchasing power and to get to your juicier dice quicker, but also it's a way of, the character you've just KO'd can serve as ramp also. You can roll them in as energy. And as you can see with for example, Mantis and Steve Trevor, it might be handy sometimes to hold them back and do the KO in your opponent's turn, wait until after you've used them as a blocker and fire it off in the action and global step of the attack phase. Removal is a classic element of the KO, killing one of your own characters to get rid of one of your opponent's characters. I mentioned Solomon Grundy earlier on. Here's Dupe, lights camera action. He's a great example. Definitely one you'd want to do in your own turn, but he says when Dupe is KO'd, capture a target opposing character die until the start of your next turn. That's really lovely. You know, grab a character and keep it out of your opponent's hands, not only for their go after they pass priority, of course, but also through your go. So if there's a blocker you don't fancy them using, or a game text that goes off in the attack step you want to take out the picture, get Dupe in the field, KO him with your Nihiloor global, and then you've removed that. They can have it back at the start of your next turn. But you know what? Roll him back in, field him. He's a bit steep on the fielding costs at the top end, but roll him back in, field him, and just rinse and repeat to keep that nasty thing you don't want your opponent to have out your face. Here's what I just kind of happened across when I was doing a little bit of research. Groot, I am Groot. It's a promo card, a recent promo card. He's a 5 cost, who's a bit on the steep side, but he says when Groot is KO'd, deal damage equal to his defense to target character die. And he's 0-1-2, 1-2-6, and 2-3-7. So I'm really, you know, those level 2 and level 3 defense numbers in that strategy of pop them up as a blocker and then KO them after they've blocked to get their game text, their game effect. You know, Groot can step up. Maybe there's a 5, 6, 7 attack overcrusher on your opponent's side of the table you want to take care of. Cool, no worries. I'll keep Groot in the field. I'll use him as a blocker, so I'm not taking any overcrush damage. But then I'll KO him in that action and global window so that I can take out another character in addition to Groot. In addition to what Groot's blocking, maybe. Or certainly take out the character that he's blocked. So a handy little mechanic, and then roll him in next turn and use it all over again. Avalanche, if anyone's watched my countering the God Catcher video, he's one who's caught my eye because tokens count as level 1 characters in the field, and he KOs all level 1 character dice. So he can be particularly handy to hold back, wait until your opponent's turn, and then when they pass priority in the main step, before they get an opportunity to attack with those nasty 10-10 counters that they've got and tokens that they've got in the field, you can clear them all down, get rid of them, and put them in a position where they have to repeat their God Catcher trap combo. Do you know Avalanche as well, actually, just before I move on to Grey Hunter here, I've been looking at spin down mechanics as well, you know, getting your opponent's characters down to level 1 using energy drain or actions that spin stuff down. But I don't know, that's probably too dice intensive. But in any case. And then Grey Hunter here, 2 cost mask. He's been popular for a while. A lovely piece to combo up with the likes of Danger Room and Staff of the Forgotten One and Seething Corruption. Is it Seething Corruption? That feels right. Might not be. You know, the one that does the same as Staff of the Forgotten One. When Grey Hunter is KO'd, deal 1 damage to all opposing character dice. So clear out that field of weenies, get rid of all those sidekicks, pair him up with a Staff of Forgotten One to make sure you've got the field all nice and slaughtered. But you're not relying on him being there to block. You can do it in the main step of your opponent's turn as well, so you don't have to do it in your own go and then give him an opportunity to re-roll the dice in. So get your Grey Hunter out in the field. Then in their go, when they pass priority in the main step, KO him with your Nihiloor global to clear down all that weenie stuff. You know, and this is great for, you know, I've used him against Atlantis teams, Fish Slap teams, you know, have loaded up on sidekicks. They've amped up the sidekick attack values, but they've not necessarily amped up the sidekick defense values. So when they pass priority, KO Grey Hunter, and then clear down the field. Disadvantage of that, of course, was up until Nihiloor's arrival, I was doing that in my own go. Now I can do it in their go before they can initiate the attack. So the power of KO effects. I've talked about ways of ramping and churning by KOing your own dice, but you can also use it as means of removal or interference. And the fact that Nihiloor allows you to do it in your opponent's turn is that added value that just really kind of makes him stand out from the crowd. Of course, there's all sorts of janky stuff that I really super encourage you guys to play around with. Here's one that we've had a little mess around with at my local gaming store. Duncan, shout out to Duncan, who's played with this dice before. Punisher Vengeful Widow. When Punisher is KO'd, roll her and any Punisher character dice in your used pile. Deal 1 damage to target opponent for each bolt rolled, then prep those dice. Now, what's particularly interesting about this is now that Nihiloor's around, you can do it in your opponent's turn. So buy up some punishers in your turn. You know, that 5 cost is a bit steep, but you know what? With a Krieg captain and a Clayface, you can get 1 or 2 together, I'm sure. KO the one that you currently got in the field during your opponent's turn. Do a little bit of cheeky, like extra, you know, soften the ground, bit of gravy damage there with the bolts that you roll. But prep 2 punishers in your go, ready for use in your opponent's turn. Love it. Janky fun. Amazing. Sage, Xavier's mole. Let's mess around with our opponent's rampant churn. Get Sage out in the field. Look at that fielding cost. 0, 0, 0. You could do this for the whole game without it costing you much more than her initial purchase cost. Get her out in the field, KO her with Nihiloor's Global, and then start corrupting that bag, your opponent's bag. Start messing around with what they get their hands on. Now, I've recently encountered this playing against it. My win condition, I didn't see it all game because my opponent kept using KOing Sage to draw dice out my bag and kept putting my win condition back in the use pile. So I never got a chance to keep buying more win condition dice to try and get it off the ground. And now with the advent of Nihiloor, you can do it in your opponent's turn as well. So let them do whatever merry shenanigans they want to do in their go. Buy whatever they want to buy because you can get in the mix and mess around with it and interfere with their plans in their go as well as your own go. So that's a lovely one. And with that 0, 0, 0 fielding cost, it's a nice one to play around with. Particularly interesting to pair up with Tabaxi Rogue as well, that does damage when your opponent draws dice from their bag. So there you go. Bit of janky fun. Now, I know we've all been looking at Gazer, but have we been looking at this Gazer, the tiny Beholderkin? Ugh, Beholder. Ugh. When Gazer is KO'd, you may draw 2 dice from an opponent's bag. Place either or both into their use pile, return the rest to their bag. So very similar to Sage with the Corrupt. The whole idea here is about interfering with your opponent's bag management, interfering with their own churn, and using Nihiloor specifically to do it in both your own go and their go, to just run interference and mess around with what they got going on and hopefully keep them away from the nice stuff that they want to have. Even something as simple as drawing a couple of dice out the bag and picking their swarmers so they don't get the advantage of swarm. So I think we've all been focusing on the Gazer, the intimidating Gazer, which is certainly a very attractive card. There's no two ways about it. But maybe in the casual setting down at your FLGS, have a little play around with KOing this bad boy. Yondu, Yaka Arrows, 5 cost bolt. When Yondu is KO'd, Yondu deals 1 damage to your opponent for each non-sidekick character die in your use pile. I think that's really interesting as well. You know, just buy up a load of cheap characters, fill up your use pile, and then fire Yondu off. But again, with Nihiloor, the fact you can do it in your opponent's turn, so not only will you have everything you've just bought waiting in the use pile, but you can make sure everything you've just spent goes in the use pile as well, or any characters that you've just attacked with unblocked gone into the use pile. So he was always a lot of fun, and I know there's been some playing around with him with some janky combos in the past, but with Nihiloor back on the scene, back on the scene, KOing Yondu, you can kind of control it a bit more. There's more options available to you. You can maximize the damage by waiting until you do it on your opponent's turn. You know, bit costly at 5, but again, just some casual fun to have a mess around with. Just something a bit different to have a little tinker with. And then finally, to take your jank to the maximum, there's Absorbing Man. This guy's a classic. Harold's Ice Cream. I've used him in some golden teams where back in the Blue Eyes kind of space. While Absorbing Man is active, when KO'd effect is used, you may use a copy of that effect. So everything I've just talked about, if you put Absorbing Man out in the field, you can do it twice. Wow. So loads and loads and loads of power in the idea of KOing your own characters. Just to summarize, you can use it to increase your purchasing power by KOing characters to roll them in as energy. You can then do that with characters that also add additional prep or churn effects to your gameplay. You can use removal cards or loads of janky cards that do really fun game effects like deliver damage. You know, I've not even mentioned that the Justice box has got Justice League retaliation cards in it. I've not even mentioned when fielded dice like the Intimidate Gazer that you might want to field and recycle around. There's tons and tons of stuff you can do with when KO'd, and I think Nihiloor adding that element of that extra oomph, that extra bit of power by giving you the option to be able to do it in your opponent's turn as well as your own now, really is going to bring the KOing your own dice thing back to the forefront, I think, or is certainly worth a new, closer look. I think Malekith and Fabricate put the idea of KOing your own dice. It was there, but just sort of took it down a tier. I think Nihiloor might just, well, I think it warrants revisiting. I think it warrants more attention. And there's many, many more sides, as I said before, than what I've just shown you here today. I just really want to put over this idea that this card is something that's definitely worth playing around with, definitely worth experimenting with. Get into your transition zones, your sidekicks, your Dice Coalition team builders, and have a look at things that might be fun, exciting and interesting to KO on your turn or your opponent's turn, to make something a little different, or go for something with a bit more flavour, even if it is just of a casual nature. So there you go, folks. Big fan of KOing my own characters. You should be too. I hope that's perhaps planted some seeds or introduced some thoughts, or even maybe just one of those cards I've shown you today. You might like to have a go at building something around for yourself. Do the thing with the thing, where you press buttons and put thumbs up and all that, because I've got a very fragile ego and it makes me feel better to see people subscribing and liking. Please do pop in the comments below. Let me know, is there a when KO'd effect I've not mentioned that you think warrants highlighting? Was I wrong about the Fabricate ruling before, because that's not out of the realms of possibility, etc, etc. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Having a Brew, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye now.